Everyone, I'm Johnny Alexander. I'm glad to welcome you back to another episode of Writers Chat, the place for writers where we talk about all things writing. I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts, Melissa Stroh and Brandy Bro, and I'm actually going to turn it over to Brandy to introduce our special guest.
Hi, we have a great guest with us today, and if you know him at all, you know him as a great sense of humor. He sent me a bio and I modified it just a little bit so it's not quite as snarky. But we have Chip MacGregor with us here today. He is the president of MacGregor Literary, a former publisher with a Time Warner Book Group and Hatchet. He's been working in publishing since the Coolidge administration, apparently. He is the author of several books, including the Y2K Family Survival Guide, which he claims saved the world as we know it. And for 10 years, he wrote a blog that was routinely named one of the 101 best websites for writers. Chip has done more than 1,000 book contracts, which is quite impressive. He's represented titles on nearly every bestseller list, including hitting #1 on the New York Times and USA Today lists. And his authors have appeared on just about every TV and radio talk show imaginable. So he's picked up a couple of useful stories along the way. He also sold a bunch of books that became movies, including Foxcatcher, which was an Oscar finalist for Movie of the Year. And he's spoken at a couple hundred writers' conferences, as well as taught at more than a dozen American colleges and universities. Chip went to college in Oregon, earned a master's at Biola, did his doctorate work back in Oregon, and then did a postdoc at Oxford University, proving once again that anyone can succeed as long as they work hard and are exceedingly lucky. And I think he's onto something there. Everybody says if you just set your mind to it, you can do it, but that's not always the case. Work is good, but you also have to have a little bit of luck and God in the middle. Chip is married and lives on the Oregon coast with his writer wife, Holly Lawrence, who is actually the brains of the outfit. His favorite story is that when he came home one day from first grade, he told his Scottish immigrant mother that when he grew up, he was going to become a book guy. After 4 decades in the business, he has certainly managed to do that. Chip, thank you for coming back to Writers Chat and being with us today. We are extremely thrilled, more than moderately proud to have you. We are very glad to have you back in. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks very much. I know that there's a bunch of discussion in the publishing world because for the last 3 weeks, we've been going through the Random House trial. The Random House purchasing Simon & Schuster. Our government, who never met a monopoly they didn't like, suddenly decides, after years and years of allowing every monopoly imaginable, suddenly decides that Random House should not buy Simon & Schuster, and which is comical on its face from when you look at publishing law. But anyway, so I know that that's been in the news, and then I know that yesterday or maybe the day before, because it's a holiday weekend, I know that April Henry tweeted out something that said, well, the trial transcripts say that there's 58,000 books published every year, and half of them sell fewer than a dozen copies in all caps. And April is, like me, an Oregonian. She actually graduated from high school with my wife. And so we've known each other for a long time. And I would say to that, that there are certain people in the industry who really love attention, even if they get all of their facts wrong. So I read that and I rolled my eyes and was like, you have got to be kidding me. So anyway, that's been shared now 25,000 times, that tweet, even though it's complete rot. So what I thought I would do is I thought I'd talk briefly about contracts and then just open it up to let people ask whatever they want. And I'll stay as long as you want. But honestly, I've been agenting. I've been agenting since full-time since 98, but I've been in publishing since 78, like before, Melissa was born, for example. And so I really have, I've been doing this a long time. I started, when I was a college student, I got a work-study grant, and went down to the employment office at Portland State and back in the days where they just write whatever the job was on a 3x5 card and post it on a cork board, in the hallway. And there was one of the cards up there read, the Clearing magazine needed a copy editor. True story. So I'm the youngest of 8, first in my family to ever go to college because we were immigrants. Neither of my parents went to high school. And I didn't know what a copy editor was. I swear to God, but I thought, well, I understand the concept of copy. I understand the concept of editing. So I guess I'll go in and apply. Okay. Clearly the only applicant because, they offered me the job. So I got my first job, when I was 19 years old in publishing, and I've literally been at it ever since. And so you start out in magazines, went to newspapers, went to books, and have really been in books for, 30 some years. So I started out looking at contracts from the publishing side because I was working for publishers. Then that proved helpful because then when I became an agent and writers' conferences were going on and people were looking for, interesting workshops to do, and everybody wants to do writing workshops. And I thought, well, what if I do a contract workshop? Well, that became wildly successful because nobody was talking about contracts because in a sense, there used to be this very paternal attitude from publishers, which frankly still exists in some ways. We're the publisher. You're just the artist. Trust me, this will be good for you. Just sign this and it's fine. And as you know, I mean, there are some authors, including some best-selling authors, who just got hosed on terrible deals. And so I started putting together just a basic understanding of contracts. So I just wanted to mention to you, whether you are publishing traditionally, and so you're signing a contract with the publisher, or you are publishing independently and you're simply signing a contract to have Amazon do it, or maybe you're working with a small press somewhere, some kind of a hybrid publisher. A contract's a legal document which will govern your art for as long as it is in print. So you have to know what it is you're signing. You wouldn't know. I'm always surprised that authors sometimes will sign a deal without really understanding what they're signing. They would never do that like with a home, or probably with a car. And this is your art. So just so you understand, what publishing basically covers is the what ifs. Are the what ifs. Publishing basic covers, what if this happens, this is what we'll do. What if this happens, this is what we'll do. What if this happens, this is what you'll do. Sometimes they can be complex. By the way, if you know anything about the law, publishing law or publishing law in this country is under what's called intellectual property rights law, or IP law. And my son happens to work for a law firm up in Seattle, Perkins Coie, doing intellectual property rights. And so, he grew up with it, with his dad always doing contracts, and now he does contracts for a big law firm. So those of you who have heard me talk before, I am like not an agent evangelist. I'm not the guy saying, no matter what, you've got to have an agent. Frankly, I think there are plenty of authors out there who don't need an agent. They need a little education and they'll be fine with it, but they don't really have to have an agent taking care of everything for them. And so I'm not somebody who's like, I want to represent everybody and everybody, once you get right with Jesus, you'll get an agent, that kind of thing. That's really not me. But I just want you to remember, if you are signing anything with a big company, whether it is with a giant publisher or with Amazon, or if you're signing something with a small company, or remember that the bigger the company, the more people they have working for them. So if you sign a deal with Simon & Schuster or HarperCollins or Macmillan or Random House or Hachette or one of the mid-sized houses, Kensington or Source Books or somebody like that, they have a team of lawyer and accountants representing them. So who's representing you? That's the thing to ask yourself. Okay, wait a minute. I'm asked to sign this, and do I really understand this? So if you need some help, you should know that You should be able to ask other authors who may or may not know something. You should be able to talk to an agent, and a good agent should be able to help you with contract questions. You should know, I answer contract questions for people pretty much every day of my life, and I'm really not exaggerating. I have contract questions come in every day, and I just answer them. These are not from clients. These are just people who want to know, because I'm tired of seeing, it's hard enough in this business to make a living at art. And so I'm tired of seeing people, frankly, get cheated is really the term. And so just understand, you can go to a lawyer, and you can, but if you go to a lawyer, make sure you're going to an intellectual property rights lawyer, somebody who knows something about entertainment law and intellectual property rights law, not like somebody who is used to doing wills and estates, or somebody who is used to doing real estate law or something like that, because the fact is they won't know about that. You can also, there are some contract review places. They have gone out of fashion, I've noticed, in the last 5 years. So it used to be, there were a bunch of those, and you'd go and you'd pay a fee, but they've gone out of fashion. The reason they've gone out of fashion is because of the pervasive influence of Amazon, which basically has one deal and says, this is what the deal is going to be, and this is what you're going to sign. And so many authors doing that they a lot of those contract service groups who say that they'll evaluate your contract for a fee, a lot of them have simply closed the doors. I will say there's if you join the Authors Guild, I forget what the Authors Guild is, probably $150 a year or something like that. The Authors Guild is a really good organization. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a bunch of authors who get together and they volunteer their time. The Authors Guild keeps an attorney on a retainer, and they will answer legal questions for you. They won't do a complete contract review, but if you've got a specific question, they will answer questions for you. So it's worth it, in my view, just for that. Okay, so having said all that as kind of a preamble, when it comes to a contract, I just want us to talk about a couple of things. What do you look for in a contract? What do you avoid in a contract? What do you ask for in a contract? Okay, so first, what do you look for in a contract? It comes down to just a few simple things. Number one, what are you responsible to create? The contract should be very clear what you're responsible to create. So that means it will say, you're going to create a novel. It's going to say the novel is basically, it's a suspense novel, or it's a romance novel, or it's a historical novel or something. So it's going to say to you what the word count is. It's a romance novel. It's going to be 75,000 words. It's going to have a due date on it. It's due on November 1. Or since publishers always like to say it's due on January 1, everyone in publishing knows it's like the dumbest thing possible, because nobody gets any work done after about December 10, and nobody really wants to spend all their holidays writing. So anyway, but so it'll say what the genre is, what you're creating, what the word count is, what the due date is. It will have something. It will say something about acceptability. You're going to write this manuscript, then it's going to be acceptable to us, and that's fine. We understand that that's a flexible term because because it's art. And so there is art built into a contract. It's also going to have, again, what I said, that first thing is, what are you responsible to create? The book, the word count, you're going to turn it on a certain date. It's going to be acceptable. And part of what you're going to create, they're going to have some indemnity clauses. And an indemnity, it just means you're making a legal promise. And an indemnity clause says, I promise I wrote this. Yeah. Somebody else didn't write it. I didn't steal it. I promise that this is like the only time I'm telling this particular story. This novel I'm writing is unique to this story. I promise that this is new. In other words, I'm not taking one of my out of print novels and reselling it to you and claiming that it's new. So that's it. So it's first, what are you responsible to create? Second thing, what is the publisher responsible to do? And they will say several things. We are going to produce the book. We're going to do it in these formats. We're going to do it as a print book. We're going to do it as an ebook. We're going to do it as an audiobook. We are going to release it. And in a range, like we're going to release it oftentimes it will say within 18 months. Sometimes it's within 24 months, sometimes it's within 12 months, but we're going to release the book. We're going to do it in this range. We are going to copyright the book. That is, we're going to send it in and have it copyrighted through the US Copyright Office. It's going to be copyrighted in the author's name. We're going to edit it. We're going to make revisions for clarity. We're going to create the cover. We're going to set the price. We're going to set the format being, is it hardcover? Is it trade paper? Is it mass market, the small size? Is it an ebook? And we're going to sell it. So there's, what do you do? What does a publisher do? The contract will also clarify who owns what. Almost every contract starts with the phrase grant of rights. So understand that you own it. If you created it, you own it. What you're doing is, if I'm the publisher, you are giving me a legal license to take it out and sell it. And so you still own it, but I've got a license to sell it. I'm the only person who has that license. So you're not going to sell it to me and then also sell it to, Sophia over here. And so you're granting me the rights. And you have to always look to see, well, what rights are being granted, because sometimes there's a reservation of rights. So, for example, if you're doing your novel and you're doing a novel with a mid-size house, it should say that any dramatic rights are reserved by you. You're not granting them to the publisher. Dramatic rights, stage plays, TV, documentaries, feature films, made for TV films. Dramatic rights. The reason you don't want to grant those to the publisher, by the way, is because book publishers are not in the business of making movies. Book publishers are in the business of making books. And it's not to say that they can't sometimes sell them, but I'm telling you, it just doesn't happen very often. Anybody here, anybody work with Thomas Nelson ever? Thomas Nelson is owned by HarperCollins, and HarperCollins has made a real push because HarperCollins is owned by Rupert Murdoch. They also own Fox, so they own Fox News and FX TV network. And Fox Family, which is supposed to be a thing. And then there's 20th Century Fox Studios for feature films and stuff like that. So they've made a push over the last 5 years or so to always get dramatic rights on their books. A movie is simply a different expression than a book. And the people who make books, when you think about it, any of the editors you worked with on your book, what was the last movie they made? Yeah. So you're going to reserve some things. I said it's going to clarify who owns what. That includes, it's going to define what out of print is. That's become very important because it used to be once a book went out of print, it was never heard from again. You want to define that. And there's a formula that a lot of agents are doing now, where we're just saying we're going to look at royalty earnings, and when earnings drop to a very small amount, let's say $300 a quarter or $150 a quarter or whatever it is. Once we've had a couple of quarters like that, look, the book's just not selling. And so we need to be able to get the book back. Now, the publisher will try and make that as confusing as possible. So they'll add language in. Again, they've got a team of lawyers doing this. So they'll have things that will say, instead of making it easy, once the book has stopped selling and isn't earning money, and you're not making $100 a quarter for 2 consecutive quarters, we'll revert the rights. Instead, they'll say, once that happens, the author can request the rights. We'll take it under advisement. We'll look at it for a year, and then we'll have a meeting. And then we're going to, have a priest come in and pray over it. And then we're going to read the tea leaves. And eventually, at some point, we'll decide yes or no. So that's what you want to stay away from. You want to make it so that it is clear what the reversion is. Define out of print, define how things can be reverted. One last thing on this. I said what you're responsible to create, what the publisher is responsible to do, and who owns what. One of the things you really want to be clear on is assignment. That is, can the publisher take your hardcover book and assign the rights to somebody else? So can they do a deal where they are not responsible for it anymore, somebody else is? The most common one is mass market, whereas a lot of the companies no longer, they don't do their own mass market books. They assign it to another company who makes a mass market book. It used to be that everybody did this. Well, this still happens with audio some, where we've got your books, we've got the audio rights. Instead of us producing it, we're going to sell it to Audible. So that we're not actually doing it. We're selling it to Amazon, who's going to do it. So you just want to clarify that. Next thing, what you're looking for in the contract, what are the financials? That is, how much you're being paid. What's the advances? What are the royalties? Are the royalties based on net or on retail? How are sub rights paid? What's the e-rights paid? Do you get free copies? If so, how many free copies do you get? What's your author buyback? Who's doing the accounting? Do they use an outside firm to check the accounting? Can you come in? And there's some simple things in here. Just get paid as often as possible.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Get paid as often as possible. I've been at this long enough. I still remember contracts were paid once a year to authors. I mean, and now I say that, and it's like I sound like my own grandfather or something. It's like back in my day, we only got paid by Random House once a year, kind of thing. Most of the big houses now pay quarterly, and of course, a lot of small presses and picked this up from Amazon. One of the good things that Amazon did was they started paying authors every month. And that was a huge selling point when Amazon first started doing commercial ebooks. So get paid as often as possible. And also the contract's going to define what happens with things like arbitration. If we get into a dispute, what happens? And hopefully that's never going to happen, but if it does. And also it will talk about reserves. Reserves are a publisher sells your book. Actually, they sell it into bookstores. They're not selling to the end user. They sell it into, Barnes and Noble, or they sell it into Betty's bookshop, right? But then Betty has 90 days where she can return unused books. And so they're sold, but they're not really sold. They're kind of sold. They're placed. Or as publishers like to say, they're sold out, but they're not sold through. So then when those books get returned, all that money that they said they were going to pay you because they sold those books, oops, now they've got to deduct the ones that were returned. So that's called a reserve. So all that's going to be clarified in the contract. What you look for in a contract, clear up any legal issues. Just make sure you're clear in your mind. If something goes wrong, who do you sue? How do we handle disputes? And you can look for, the three sticklers I always point out, future books, options, and non-competes. Future books, do they tell you exactly what the book is going to be, or is it just kind of you're going to do a book of some kind with this? Future book. An option. HarperCollins used to have what we called the option from hell. Now, again, you're going to think I'm making this up, but this is a true story. It used to be if you signed a deal with HarperCollins, you signed a deal for this book, okay, and then you promised them 2 more books. But those books were optioned, but they weren't actually contracted. Okay, so you do book A, you owe them B and C. You now do a contract for book B. You still owe them book C, but there's an option for 2 more books. So now you owe them D and E. So you see, for every book you did, you owed them more. And finally, it was taken to court, and it's like, yeah, I'm sorry. This is like indentured servitude. I'm sorry that you can't make this stand up in court. So you just want to be aware of any option language. I can live with a first look option. If we're working with a publisher and we like them, we show them we show them a proposal for the next book. That's fine. I'm fine with that. What I don't like is any kind of really hard option. You're going to do it, and you're going to do it for the same dollars. Well, what if this book takes off and goes crazy? This is my next book's going to be worth a lot more. I also don't like the notion of a hard option where we get your next book, but there's no details about what it's going to, what they're going to pay, which I see all the time, just so you know. It's like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to show it to you because we're working with you. We'll give you 30 days. We'll give you 45 days to look at it. Then we're free to take it wherever we want to take it. Also, non-competes. Non-competes have been a big deal here recently. And a non-compete simply says, you're going to do a book with us, and then you can't do anything else. And I mean, sometimes the breadth of the non-compete will almost be like, you're never going to write another book. Now, the courts have said very clearly, you can protect the sale of a product, but what you can't do is prohibit the artist from creating something else. But I'm telling you, I probably get more questions on options and non-compete language than anything else here over the last year, because again, publishing attorneys have gone crazy with option clauses and non-compete clauses. So just throwing that out. All right, I had said I was going to be quick, and clearly I was lying. What to look for in a book contract? Those are things to look for. What to avoid in the book contract? Look, the simple rule here, what to avoid in a contract: make sure everything sounds fair. That's all it is. You're trying to make sure of everything. So be aware of your rights. What are you promising them? What are you promising to do to them? What are you restrained from doing with them? You want to be careful of giving up things that could be valuable to you down the road, but pay you nothing right now. So be aware of rights, be aware of expectations. Oftentimes, I think authors, they don't have clarity as to what the contract is, and so they signed it anyway. And I say to my authors all the time, look, if you don't understand what this is, ask me and let's talk about it, because I don't want you to sign something unless it's clear to you. Now, is that a pain? Oh, of course it's a pain, but this is legal stuff. I mean, this is why, you only get into the law if you're willing to go through brain damage. So you should have real clarity as to what it is you're signing. You should, again, you want to be aware if the publisher doesn't want you to sell the book. And some publishers are doing that now, where it's like, well, they really don't want you selling the book. They want to completely control selling the book. And you just want to be aware if your publishing contract prohibits you from doing that. Again, you're just asking, what's your legal responsibility? By the way, one of the things to be aware of is permissions. And I throw that in just because I don't know how many nonfiction writers we have here, but even with fiction, sometimes if you understand how citations work in this country. I don't want to get too into the weeds here with this. I think we're going to do a big picture thing, but if you cite anybody, fair use law in this country says that you can cite short snippets of things, but anything longer, you have to get permission. So I had an author one time who put together basically a gift book for a gift book company for DK, and he did not understand that every time you quote, there's a difference between creative writing and narrative writing, and so you have to get with narrative writing. You can cite a passage, and as long as you say, look, this is taken from this book and everything like that, it's fair use. That's fine. Creative writing, you got to get permission, and creative writing would include poetry and song lyrics, right? And so you're supposed to get permission on those things. I had somebody do a gift book one time, and every page was basically based on song lyrics and quoted the song. And I was like, do you have permission for this? No, we have to pay for permission. True story. He ended up paying more in permissions then the publisher was paying him to do the book. That's a true story. And it's the author who pays, which makes sense legally. The reason the author pays for permissions, of course, is because who is responsible in the contract to create the book? You are, the author. That means if there's permissions to pay, the publisher isn't paying them, you're paying them. So anyway, okay, just being aware of those things, anything that will restrain your future, any kind of non-compete, any kind of option, being aware of any kind of legalese, making sure you understand the contract. Again, what you want to do is you want to figure out, how do you earn money? All right, so I'll end with this. Keep in mind 5 things. The principle of clarity. Clarity says, I understand what I'm signing. The principle of reasonableness. Reasonableness is part of the law. So when they're looking at behaviors on both sides, when there's a dispute, one of the things that the judge will say is, the judge is supposed to ask, what would a reasonable person do in this situation? So that's great to keep in mind when you're reading a contract and reviewing it, being able to say, okay, first, is it clear? Second, is this reasonable? Would a reasonable person do this? And if it seems reasonable, okay. And reasonableness, I know it's a squishy kind of thing, but the courts understand that. And so you're reading is trying to go, okay, is this reasonable or not? Third thing, the principle of necessity. I'm going to ask for things that are necessary. The publisher should ask for things that are necessary. If either side is asking for unnecessary things, then we have to really look hard at what's being asked for. This is one of the reasons why I struggle with publishers asking for dramatic rights on books. It's like, you guys don't even do that. Here's one of the issues when it comes to this, the principle of necessity. Oftentimes I see small publishers asking for foreign rights. So in other words, they want the book and they want to be able to translate it under other languages, except they don't actually do any foreign deals. That happens all the time. Small publishers who don't really sell into Europe, they don't really sell into Asia, they don't really sell into South America, but they want the rights. So here's what's going to happen if you give them those rights, if you sign it. See, that's an unnecessary thing, something that I would try to take out of the contract. What's going to happen is the publisher that retains those rights, they're going to wait for the phone to ring. Now, they're not calling people to try and sell it. They're not being proactive. They're just being reactive. If the phone rings and a publisher in Poland says, hey, comrade, do you have the rights to Dennis Shepard's book? Yes, we do. Oh, great. We'd like to do it in Polish. Okay, but that's a movie scene. That doesn't happen in real life. Although Dennis is huge in Poland. I don't know if you knew that. Anyway, so I said the principle of clarity, the principle of reasonableness, the principle of necessity, and the principle of negotiation. That is, understand that there are certain things everybody needs to be willing to negotiate. Don't let the publisher be paternal and say that, no, this is how we do things. Yeah, I don't care how you do things. This is what I'd like to see. That means you're going to have to go in with some sense of what you'd like. And that's why I always end with this. The principle of strategy. I find most authors go into a negotiation really unprepared. They don't really know what they want. They don't really have a plan. Like, what's a win for you? What are the things that are important for you? And that's one of the reasons why whenever I do a negotiation, so I'm in the midst of a couple of book negotiations right now. And I always try and view it as a partnership. I do. And I swear, and there are some editors who would claim, oh, no, Chip is always trying to negotiate. Look, I am just trying to make this a win for both sides. The reason is because I want my author to have a book that sells and they make money. And I want the publisher to have a book that sells and they make money. So everybody stays in business. That's what I'd really like. I'd really like this to be a win. That means when I enter a negotiation, I've got to be prepared. I've got to have some kind of a plan. I've got that attitude of wanting to partner. It means I listen, because I still learn stuff. Sometimes it's just important for me to know that this is what the publisher finds really important. So here's a great example is audiobooks. So a while back, there were some companies doing audiobooks, but most publishers were not. And if you wanted to have the audiobook, you could retain the audiobooks and try and sell it yourself. Now, since COVID, audio has exploded. Audio is the fastest growing segment in book publishing right now. 25% each growth in each of the last 2 years. Just been amazing. And what happened was before COVID, Amazon went around and bought up all the audiobook companies, so they owned, Brilliance and Oasis and Recorded Books and Audible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now with the explosion of audio, suddenly there's other companies that have popped up that are doing audiobooks to trying to compete with them. But there are times where a publisher will just say, no, we have to retain the audio. Okay, so I used to fight that. And now I've learned it's like, okay, that's become a big enough deal that sometimes that is really important. So we just did a deal. We're working with a mid-sized publisher with an author. Do you know the audio company was willing to pay more as an advance on the audiobook than the print publisher was? And that was a first for me. It's just that this author has done a couple of audiobooks, which just went huge since COVID, since people started listening to audiobooks all the time. And suddenly, they were willing to pay a lot of money for the audio. So that's why it's like, have a strategy. So I'm going to tell you, one of the strategies that I have is try and make sure both sides feel like they win. One of the strategies I have is to not be in a hurry. I tend to think that decisions that I've raced into are the ones that I often regret. And so publishing is such a slow business. You are going to think about your book for a year, and then you're going to start writing, and it might take you 2 years to write it, and then you hunt around and you find an agent or not, and then you hunt around and find a publisher. And if it's with a traditional publishing house, they're going to have the manuscript in for about a year before it comes out. So, I mean, it's years in the making. And even if you do it yourself, and even if you're cranking books out and stuff like that, it's still not instantaneous. It's not like you write it today, you sell tomorrow, you make money the next day. Publishing is a slow business. It's what we call slow money. And I am always willing to be patient, to not be in a hurry, to sit and listen, to be quiet, often in a negotiation, just because I've got a plan and I know what I'm trying to get. And it's pretty rare that a publisher is like, oh no, we've got to get this done and we've got to get this done today, kind of thing. It just doesn't happen as often. All right. So I've been talking for 40 minutes. Sorry to blab on so much. I want to be able to leave lots of time for people to ask questions. We can talk about contracts. We can talk about anything you'd like to talk about. But I'm going to turn it back over to Brandy or Johnny or whoever.
Well, I have a question. This is talking about book contracts. How do agent contracts differ from book contracts?
So an agent contract is basically personal representation. So that means, let's see, Brandy, let's take you and me. If you approached me and said, will you help me sell this? Look, every agent is strong in certain things and weak in certain things, just like every writer. Some writers are, some writers are great at romance, but can't write suspense, or they're great at fiction. And, this is always funny because I've done so much nonfiction. I have a lot of nonfiction writers who always want to do fiction and they never can, because I, again, grew up in magazines and newspapers, where you tell. And nonfiction people coming out of that, they tell stuff all the time. And then they try and become a fiction writer and it opens with, 19 pages of describing stuff. And it's like, that's not what you do in fiction. So the fact is, what happens with different agents, some agents are really good at editing. And as a matter of fact, of course, a lot of agents used to be editors. And what nobody ever seems to want to admit is that some editors or some agents are really good at editing, but maybe not so good at negotiating. Mm-hmm. And the opposite is true. There's some lawyers who become agents and they're great at negotiation and they're tough negotiators and they know all this and everything like that. They wouldn't know a good book if it came up and bit them on the butt. And I've seen that happen so many times. So finding an agent, if you're looking for an agent, I would say find an agent who's actually a fit for you, and that means you have to have some sense of what you need. I really need somebody who's good at this. So but I tend to be really good at talking through stories with people, but I do not spend a lot of time actually editing a manuscript. I will introduce people to editors. For me, in my situation, it just doesn't pay. It doesn't pay off for me to spend all my time editing a manuscript. And I used to be an editor. So I'll say to people, let me introduce you to a good editor who can help you get this. Now, but talking through it, oh my gosh, I love that. I love sitting around talking through the story. I'm good at talking to artists about their careers. So you guys, there's no reason you would know this, but back when I was back when I was in my doctoral program at the University of Oregon, the program I was getting a PhD in organizational theory. So the theory of how organizations grow and change over time, right? And I got a GTF, a graduate teaching fellowship, at the Career Planning and Placement Office. So here was the University of Oregon's thinking at the time. We have all these master's programs. We've got all these MFA programs. You can get a Master of Fine Arts in dance, in music, in vocal performance, in poetry, in writing. There were all these, and they didn't have a single tool to help those people who were graduating. So to get into an MFA program and your principal instrument is violin, you have to already be pretty good at violin. Nobody starts, and is taking Suzuki lessons, so the question then became, okay, so somebody comes in, they're already good, they get their MFA. Then how do we help them? And nobody really had a clue for that. So that's why they hired me, gave me a GTF, so I could create tools for helping people figure out how do we cobble together a career for a couple of stars in every class. Somebody's going to go get a job, with a London Philharmonic. Other people, they're going to be teaching the band part-time at the Salem Public High School, and they're going to be working in a quartet that plays at weddings and at winery openings, and they maybe will help out with some of the part-time symphonies. The city of Salem has a part-time symphony, and and so part of that is figuring out for people, what is success for you, and what's going to be fulfilling for you, and what do you want to do, and are there things you haven't thought about? So for me, talking to artists about their career is really important. So I love talking with the people who I represent about what are you going to do and what's success and where are you going to go with this. I'm not going to say most agents don't do that. I hear agents all the time say, oh, we do career planning. And I'm like, you don't even know what career planning is. Again, I'm not being critical of other agents. In fact, because I'm friends with other agents. It's just I hear agents talk about it. And I think for most of them, career planning is, it's a book contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want me to help you with your career? I'll get you a book contract, and then you'll have something to write. And that's and that's just total BS. Anyway, so back to agents. So the agent contract should clarify your relationship. So I will sometimes do, for example, we worked with the former #2 guy in the FBI, Paul Latursky, and we did his memoir. The contract said I was going to help him with that one book. He's not a career writer, and he's 80 something, he wanted to do one book. And so I would represent him for that one book, and it just laid out, and mine's 2 pages long, and it's written in the form of a letter. So it's pretty easy, but it just says, here's what I'll do for you. I'll help you get the book ready. I'll shop at the publishers. I'll keep you apprised of what's going on. When we get offers from people, I'll show them to you. I'll tell you what I think, but I don't take signing authority for authors. So I don't have a power of attorney. Then once, I'll tell you what I think, we'll decide. the contract comes in, I will negotiate the contract. I'll show it to you. I can't sign the contract on your behalf. And then I'll walk you through the process of the book coming out. I won't take charge of your marketing, but I'm there to consult with you and help you. And for doing that, I make 15% of whatever the book makes. You're never going to write me a check. There's no consulting fee for this. If the book gets $100,000 advance, I make 15% of that. If it makes $1 million in royalties, I get 15% of that. If it makes $100 in royalties, I get 15% of that. So I work on commission. I don't have any set fees. There is an organization, the American Association of Literary Agents, AALA. I have to stumble over that because it changed last year. For 20 years, I was a member of AAR, and then they changed the name last year. And the AALA, American Association of Literary Agents, if you go to their website, aala.org, it has right on the homepage, you can click on, and it will have the canon of ethics for a literary agent. And it will just say things like they shouldn't be, you shouldn't be writing checks. They should be working on commission. And anyway, there are certain restrictions on it. Anyway, so that's what a literary agent contract looks like. I promise on the next question, I'm going to give a much shorter answer. It's going to be like yes or no, and I'll have a number.
It may not just be a yes or no answer, but let's see. Sandra asks, what do you think about publishers that require you to purchase a certain number of books to sell on your own?
Yeah, so what the publisher is doing there, of course, is they are trying to share the risk. Mm-hmm. Morgan James does that. Morgan James Publishing does that. You don't pay them a fee like you would with some publishers. So they say, we're not a vanity press. You have to agree to buy, I have no idea how many it is. Well, I honestly, I don't know if it's 300 books or it's 3,000 books or it's 5,000 books. I don't know if it's, $5,000 or it's $15,000. But so it's interesting. I used to be negative on that. I used to be like, oh, come on. They're not, I understand. Look, things have changed. Publishing has changed. There's not one system of doing it anymore. And so I would say, the one thing I would say is that if, and this may seem like common sense, but look, if you have to buy 3,000 books, let's say, or let's say 1,000 books, if you have to buy 1,000 books, make sure you know how to sell 1,000 books.
Yeah.
Because books are going to come somewhere between 16 and 48 copies to the case, depending on the size. So let's say there's 24 in a case. That's 4 cases of books for 100. And if you're getting 1,000 books, that's 40 cases, which are going to sit in your garage. And
you better hope you have a garage.
Yeah, and books are heavy. That's the other thing. Just picking up a case of books, and people are always thinking, "Oh yeah, I'll just drop them here in the bathroom." Yeah, you got to keep them dry. And the other thing is that covers change is an interesting thing, just like clothing changes. So you'll notice covers. You can expect your cover will work for somewhere around 3 to 5 years, and after that, it's going to start to look dated. And people are going to be like, when did this come out? If you try and sell them a book with a really dated cover. So that's the one caveat I'd have. If you don't have a system for selling books, you want to be careful with that particular model.
We also had a question about ancillary, and oh gosh, I can't even say it. Ancillary products. Back when you were talking about like the audio rights and all of that kind of thing. Yeah. And I'm going to add to that too, the cover art. Are authors allowed to use that like for book bags and make their own stuff?
Yeah, so you will need permission. Okay. If the publisher's creating the cover, you'll need permission. Every publisher will give that. 99 times out of 100, every publisher will give you that permission to use it for marketing purposes. Mm-hmm. Ancillary products is an interesting question because there are times where that will turn into money, and it usually is. So for with nonfiction, for example, I find that it's usually related to some kind of a cause. So somebody, we're doing a book on being a foster parent, and they're working with a big foster parent organization. Because of that, they're doing the book. They're going to have T-shirts. They're going to have stationery or cards, note cards of some kind. They want to do some kind of a journal. And I'm like, yeah, journals are hard because it's basically blank pages with a cute thing at the top, and publishers hate selling books of blank pages. We used to do calendars, but nobody does anymore. But there's apps that you can do. That's one of the things to think about. Can you do that better, or are you better off to let the publisher handle those? And the fact is, if that's the kind of thing you know about, or you can educate yourself about and sell, retain those. Publishers are rarely going to fight you over ancillary rights. Sometimes with big publishers, they actually have people who do that. And obviously one of the most common things, of course, is with a number of books. We've sold ancillary. The publisher has sold ancillary products into Hallmark stores, for example, because they have those relationships. So,
well, Pam was the one who asked that, and I know she writes children's books, and I think she has a regular, like a little stuffed animal of her main character. So, Pam, if you want to come on and ask that, and I know Sophia also had a question. So, Sophia, why don't you come on as well? And anybody else, if you want to just go ahead and pop in, that's fine.
Yeah, pop in and feel free to ask your questions.
More questions. So Pam, we'll go to you first if you have anything else to say, and then Sophia, you're up next.
This was a gift. I had a friend, when the first Willoughby book came out, she was like, can I do a knitted Willoughby for you? I'm like, well, yeah. So I use him for marketing. He has his own Instagram, and stuff like that. People always want to buy, when I'm buying the books and he's sitting on the table, they're like, can we buy him? I'm like, no, there's just him. So now I indie published Willoughby, so I have all the rights, and I can do that. But it's not, I've looked into it. It's kind of a pain.
But I know somebody who does that. I know somebody who does those.
Really?
Yeah, and they make miniature ones. Okay, so do you remember the novelist Susan Page Davis? She wrote. She's older now, but and frankly, she might be retired. But I think she lives in Maine, and she does. She did romance novels back in the days of sweet romances. Her daughter, the things the people you meet. Her daughter, who's a friend of mine on Facebook, she makes those, but in little ones so that they're inexpensive. Wow. Little knit animals, and that's what she does for a living.
Wow!
And she'll produce big quantities of them. So if you, I'm totally serious. If you want to email me, Pam, later, okay, I'll just put you in touch, and you find out what would she charge to make, 50 of them or 100 of them.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I could sew and stuff my own, because I have a pattern that I can modify. I don't have time. I just there's just not time to do all of that, and to keep writing and the marketing. And I'm already sewing and selling quilts. I'm like, there's just no time. So
we own this. So my wife. My wife's a writer. I'm an agent. That's how we make our living, right? She owns a bookstore in town. Now, we live in a small tourist town right on the Pacific Ocean, right? So she owns a bookstore, which is a block from the beach, and it's a big deal. It's been written up and everything. Every time you go to the beach, you got to go to Cloud and Leaf. But yeah, she owns a bookstore, and then we own a whiskey bar. And
I'm coming out there someday.
Yeah, well, and so it's one of those things where the whiskey bar is fun, but it's like you sewing, little stuffed animals. It's fun, and I enjoy doing it. It's always nice when you get something done, you make some money. But I hate it when suddenly something happens and this becomes the focus of your life.
Right.
Where everybody's like, I don't care about the books. I really want to talk about the stuffed animals, and you're like, yeah, I don't really care about it. So that's how I am. It's like, I'm happy to talk about Scotch. That's really not what I want to focus my life on.
Right.
Sorry, somebody else was it Sophia?
Sophia.
Hi. I gotta say.
By the way, is it Sophia or Sophia?
It's Sophia.
My my grandmother, back in Pitlochry, Scotland. Sophia Grace. And she always said Sophia, and I have no idea.
That's sweet.
Yes. Wisdom, right? Wisdom.
Yes, yes. So, my husband's grew up in Corvallis, and so I gotta say, go Beavers.
Go Beavs, yeah.
But
The Beavs, I know none of you care, but the Beavs are 1-0 for the first time in like 30 years. They actually won a game. I don't.
But I'm still trying to get on board. I've had several flash fictions published and stuff like that, and I'm trying to get my novel, my trilogy, published. It's science fiction, and I'm well on my way. I've gotten several rejections, so yay.
Good feel.
And what I am running against is people like the story, they like the voice, they like the story arc, but they say this is a hard sell for our readers. And this is what they said. I've been told that I write hard fiction, hard science fiction. And I don't know if I really do. I might write hard sci-fi for the Christian markets that I've mostly been pitching to. And I'm trying to find an agent because I'm a good editor and I've got a good bank of people that I bounce things off of.
So what's the question?
How do I find an editor or a publisher who does harder sci-fi?
When you say harder sci-fi,
Alien POV, think Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar. That's what my story is like without the environmental preaching.
Okay. All right. So I would have, I'd probably have 3 suggestions for you, Sophia.
Yay.
First, old fashioned. Okay. You can hear my cat yelling at me. Yes, I'll be there in a minute. All right. Uli is screaming at me for something. Okay, so first, old-fashioned way, go to a great bookstore. If you come to Oregon, go to Powell's. Hang out in the sci-fi section and start looking. Who publishes this stuff? What are other books that are similar to mine? Who publishes? Who's a publisher? Look on the inside pages. Who are the editors? That's the old-fashioned way. Now, the new way, spend $20, go to publishersmarketplace.com, publishersmarketplace.com. Publishers Marketplace is a database that's used by people in the industry to research exactly this question.
Okay.
And so you can go to, for example, you could go, you can research keywords, aliens. You can research genre, science fiction. You can research by imprints. You can also do a research, you can put a database together. What are all the imprints who are all the publishers who are doing science fiction? You can also search by editor. Who are all the editors who are acquiring science fiction? You can make a list of editors who are acquiring science fiction, and then you can actually click on the editor's name and see all the books that they've acquired over the last 3 or 4 years. Okay. It'll cost you $20 to subscribe for a month, but the fact is it's much easier than sitting on the floor of Barnes and Noble for a day and a half. Okay. Third thing you could do is you could go to one of the conferences. You might have already done that, but Science Fiction Writers of America, SFWA, they've got an annual conference. They're going to do a live conference again. I know that the people in charge of SFWA are sometimes a little twitchy and not the easiest people to get along with, but the fact is, it's a great conference. You said you do Christian science fiction, is that right?
I do clean science fiction.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a group.
It's raw, but it's clean.
There's a group of people who do that called Realm Makers. I'm
a member.
Oh, okay. So all right. So you can go to their conference and everything. Because I'm not a science fiction guy, I have no idea like who goes. And so I'll be honest with you, I don't know how many agents they get that go. Yeah. That's what I thought.
very small. There's like
Yeah.
just a handful.
Sci-fi is so nichey. It's got this little niche of I know that someone is here from France.
Isabel.
So,
She had to go.
Too bad. I was going to throw out some French phrases at her just now. I was gonna like niche. I was gonna say. Did you notice how I said niche and not niche?
yes, notice.
Yeah. If somebody could text her that, I'd appreciate it. Chip used niche correctly.
And the challenge is my story is not overtly Christian. It's got messages that come from my worldview. It is cleaner, and I'm not.
Yeah.
But now the more traditional houses are looking for things that are more message driven.
Yes, they are.
And they want content that I don't have. And I don't know if that just automatically.
Yeah, but that's one of the reasons why I do. This is interesting. So I have a friend. Okay, so Davis Bunn, if you know Davis Bunn is the writer in residence. He's an American, but he's the writer in residence at Oxford University. And he's a longtime friend. I've been his agent for years. Davis normally writes soft stories, Nicholas Sparks-ish kind of stories. However, Davis has this other side of him that has done sci-fi, which a lot of people don't know. And it's really the only sci-fi I've ever represented has been some Davis titles, but that's been interesting because through him, I've met some people and they've asked questions. So I've had to kind of get to know that world a little bit. And it's not a neighborhood where I've played, but there's all these small sci-fi companies. And some of them have pretty good market penetration. I didn't realize there are 20 sci-fi publishers in the UK where sci-fi is a huge, it's just percentage-wise of the population, it's just a huge success over there. So anyway, that's one of the things is that go to Publishers Marketplace because you can research some of the smaller companies, Erewhon and places like that.
Thank you.
You bet. Who's next?
So one more question before we go off, because we're getting at the top of the hour. But negotiation is something that writers are often very hesitant to engage in with a prospective publisher when they get their contract. And so how do we best go about negotiating a contract with confidence and not arrogance so that both sides can win?
I think that's a great question. And I'm happy to answer the question. And even though I would say most people, even hearing this, won't do this, just so that you know, here's what I would do. I would sit down, and the reason I say this is because I have been an author myself, so I have I've done this. I'd sit down and I would write out before, this is what I'd really like. So that I can start to create a planner. These are things I'd really like. I much prefer to negotiate via email than in person. And the reason is because everybody is more patient on email. Sometimes when you're in person, they're like, okay, so 12 and a half. So can you live with 12 and a half? And you're like, yeah, okay. Whereas if I had time to think about it, I'd be like, my God, no, I don't want 12 and a half. I want 15, and it's just easier to say in an email. Yeah, I've thought about it. I appreciate the 12 and a half. I think I'd really like to stick with 15 if we can get there. So, writing things out. So I would write things out ahead of time. So in a sense, I had a script that I was going to go from. And then when they send it to me, you just go back and forth. And this is such a funny thing because oftentimes in person, we get emotional about stuff. But when it's written down, it's so much flatter. And it's simply that they send a document and they've got a line which says, we're going to offer you a $3,000 advance, and you can just insert in there. I really appreciate that $3,000 advance. The fact is, my goal was to get 5,000. I'm just wondering if you can see your way clear to coming up to a $5,000 advance. So you're just learning to write things politely but clearly. You're not backtracking and apologizing. Well, I know you guys are big and I'm just this author. You're not apologizing like that. You're just saying, this is what I would like. So I'd say have some kind of a plan. Know what it is that you want. Write those things clearly if you can. Don't apologize for it. Understand that this is not a battle to be won. It's a negotiation for everybody to feel like they get a win. So look for some places where you can win and be willing to give some things up. Does that help?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Again, for the people who are here, I know I can sometimes be hard to reach, but I make it that way on purpose. But the fact is, anytime I talk to a small group like this, I always say, if you have a question, feel free to email me and I'll answer your question for you. It's chip@MacGregorLiterary.com. I'm easy to reach. Now, I have a few more minutes if you want, but I know that you need to.
Well, does anyone else have a question or while we're here? Yes, Rachel.
Rachel does.
You're muted, sweetie.
Kind of have to. Okay, so what are some of your what would be like the top few things you sort of are your non-negotiables, if you will, when you're in the author seat? And what are some of the things that you let go of, like you said? Like, what does your
Rachel, I really like that question. And it's probably different for everybody. So I don't know if these are non-negotiable, but things that I find important. I like to retain dramatic rights. That, to me, that's an important one. But the reason that's important for me is because I sell a lot of movies. I sell a lot of movies, a lot of TV shows. We're doing we're working with Brainpower right now on a movie. We're working with Netflix right now on a short series. We're working on 5 different documentary projects right now. So that, to me, that is something that's really important. Another thing that's really important to me is making sure that the book is coming out in a reasonable time. What will drive you crazy is the publisher, we're going to publish it in the next 36 months. No, we really need in the next 12 months kind of thing. So to me, not having it be way out there. Another thing that's important is getting paid as often as possible. There's publishers out there who will still offer to pay it once a year, and always ask for quarterly, which is how most of them are doing it nowadays. Now they might say, well, no, but we can do it, semi-annually. Okay, semi-annually is still better than annually. So let's see, those would be some things. That are some essentials for me. It's funny. So that my mentor, the guy who, Rick Christian, who was a longtime boss at Alive Communications, I remember him saying to me one time, and I was young, this is 25 years ago. I was like a teenager. Okay, maybe not, but I remember him saying to me, in a contract, what's interesting is that everything in that contract is negotiable except like the name and address of the publishing company. And I remember hearing that and going, oh, is that? And it occurred to me, well, yeah, that's exactly right. Everything. So what publishers have started doing is they've started sending contracts in it's really 2 documents, the contracts and the appendix. And I don't know if anybody has seen one of these, but a lot of the publishers are doing this now. And so they'll talk. So the contract are the things that are that pertain to this particular book. So we're doing a book with Melissa, let's say. These are things that just relate to Melissa's book. And then the addendum or the appendix, this is all the stuff that's like non-negotiable. Yeah, no. And they will have stuff in there which is terrible. And I'll just, I honestly, I don't want to exaggerate. Dozens of times I've had the contracts person say, oh yeah, we don't negotiate that. And I've got a stock response. Well, if you want to do this book, you do negotiate that, because this is all part of the contract, you know. Because you see the danger of that. Pretty soon they're sticking crazy stuff in there. And I see it happen. I see it happen all the time. So that's one of the things to watch out for. Rachel, I'm not sure if I really spoke to your question exactly, although I think it's a great question. What are the absolute, indispensable things? I probably should have a better answer for that.
And some of that might vary depend upon each individual.
It would vary depending on each individual and each book. Somebody, Sophia maybe, had said she works with some Christian publishers. Here's an interesting thing. There's Christian publishers and let's call them general market publishers, right? General market publishers have a standard royalty. They pay 10% on the first 5,000 copies, 12.5 on the next 5,000 copies, 15% thereafter. You never negotiate royalties with a general market publisher. The royalties are fixed. Christian publishers, this is one of the things I have to get. Christian publishers, they always want to negotiate royalties. And it's so every time I come back to that, I'm like, wait, what do you want to? It's one of the things. It's an interesting difference between the two markets, the religious market. Catholic publishers, this is true, not just Christian, but Catholic publishers the same way, Jewish publishers the same way, religious publishers as a whole, they want to negotiate royalties. And they want to ascertain, they want to base it on net versus a sale price of the book. So it's interesting. It's one of those things that if you have an experienced agent, they'll know the difference. I talk to Christian agents all the time who have never done a general market book and they don't understand the difference. But that's a significant difference. So knowing the market that they're in, will know that there's different things to negotiate with different publishers.
Wow. We've got
Rachel,
about
was there something else, Rachel? A follow-up?
Yeah, you might kill me for asking this, but
That's right.
Is there how specific, or is there anything to be aware of that I wouldn't want to leave out of a written release that I'm asking my people I'm interviewing for my book to sign?
Oh, actually, yeah. So because I do a lot of nonfiction and we've done a lot of memoir, and because of that, I face this question 100 times. And yes, what's interesting is that is not fixed law. And so different publishers will view it different ways. You understand there's freedom of expression in this country. And so, and also you and I can have a conversation, Rachel, and 10 minutes later, we can both write about it. And we may take completely different perspective of how that conversation went. I might think, Rachel, I had this conversation, it was great. She agreed with everything. We're really happy. And you're coming away thinking, what a jerk, you know? And we've all had that happen before where, you're talking to somebody, you're hearing somebody talk about a conversation. You're sitting there going, is that how they perceive that? That's not what happened at all, kind of thing, And so the reason I say all that is different publishers will approach it different ways. I've had publishers say, oh no, anybody in this book, we need we need some kind of release from people who are being interviewed. And then I've had other publishers who are like, release, so what? the fact is, this is your story. You're able to tell it your way. And as long as you don't actually libel someone, that is, say something to try and make them look bad or say something false about them, you're fine. And so,
Well, I'm telling their stories, though, if you will. So,
but are you the author? Are you the author with the rights to it?
I am, except for one interviewee, which I have. I mean, he's given me permission to do whatever with the words he gave me.
Okay, but you're collecting stories and putting them into a book that you're the author of.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've included in it everything from permission to use it on anything I create, including whether it's, online, videos.
So are you taping them?
Whatever. Pardon?
Are you taping them when you interview them?
Mostly, yes. I'm audio recording.
I mean, that's the easy solution. Tape them and keep the tapes. A lot of interviews will tell you that. It used to be those of us who started in newspapers and magazines would say, "Oh, look who's there. Hello there, young person with the yellow hat." It used to be that reporters, they were always writing things down, and then they had to keep their written notes. Same with police officers. They would interview people. They had to keep their written notes because those were considered legal documents, where they could be used as legal documents. Nowadays, most people doing interviewing, they're simply recording it. So if there's ever a question, they can.
Are you saying recording the permission to, or just recording the interview?
Just recording the interview. Okay. Yeah,
I am, and as much as possible, I'm turning them into typed transcripts too.
Right.
So I have, both hard copy and audio.
I think you're safe. The question becomes, it's a right to privacy issue, by the way. And the question becomes, what are you allowed to say in print? If you ask people questions and they respond, the understanding and let's see, I should preface this by saying I'm not a lawyer. If you were looking for a legal opinion, you should talk to a lawyer about this. From an agent's perspective, having done a lot of these books, you ask people questions. If they answer your questions, you are allowed to use their questions. It's only a right to privacy. It's only a privacy issue if you are saying things about them that they have not shared with you. That becomes a problem. So, and the reason that publishing it like this, it's always kind of fuzzy, and the reason is because celebrity, for example, cancels out your right to privacy.
Yeah.
Right. Or public servant.
Yep.
Correct?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's one of those where
Right.
it's not a hard and fast thing.
Right.
So
I do have
and if you ever have a question, simply talk to an entertainment attorney, and I can give you the name of an entertainment attorney to ask. I mean, you're going to pay them, but still, if there's ever a question about it, and any publisher who's working with you will basically say, so anytime we do a memoir, it's basically vetted. That is, they have an attorney somewhere who reads it and says, and either gives a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or says, I think we need a permission from this particular person. And it's almost always the only time. The funny thing is, lawyers working for publishing houses rarely ask for any kind of a signed release. The only time they do is when there's some kind of sensitive information shared. For example, we're telling this story about this person, and we drop in something sensitive. They went through a divorce, they had an abortion, something like that, and we dropped that in. Well, we should probably, those are the times. I know I'm getting the signal here. Brandy.
Thank you.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, I think we can stay as long as you're willing to answer questions. We do have 3 more, so let's.
Okay, sure. I'll do a few more. That'd be fine.
That'd be great. Thank you. Kathy asked about Query Tracker. Good place to go or something to stay away from?
I think that I keep hearing good things from people about Query Tracker. I have yet to actually see any real value in it. But the fact is, I'm always open to letting there be other avenues where people discover some kind of a path to publication. So,
what is it for those who may not know? I think I know what it is, but I'm not sure I could explain it.
oh, you can just Google Query Tracker, and you'll see. I'm going to Google it right now just so that. So it's supposed to be where you submit stuff, and then agents and editors can come online and find it and review it. And you obviously pay a fee to do that. And you can go to YouTube and you can see an introduction to it and everything like that. And again, so I'm old enough that I'm 64, and I'm old enough to remember when all of us were negative about this kind of stuff. Oh my gosh, I can't believe. But then you know what? Things change, and it's like, look, there's no one path to success. So when I was asked about Query Tracker at a conference recently, here's exactly what I said. It used to be that there was one path to success in the music business. You put a band together, you played at dive bars and stuff like that. You sent out tapes, you tried to talk to people until you got discovered, and they got you into bigger venues, and then maybe they'd have you open for somebody, and then hopefully you'd find success. But nowadays, I mean, we know people who simply taped themselves singing, posted it on YouTube, and suddenly they had a record deal. And so things have changed. So so I feel like Query Tracker is one of those things. Yeah, there's various avenues to publication that used to not be there. So I'm open to them. I never go. If the question is, do I ever go on Query Tracker? No, but I've been agenting for 25 years. I've done 1,000 book contracts. I'm not looking. Yeah. I'm generally not looking for a ton of new things to represent. Okay. What was the next one?
Okay. What is a resource to learn screenwriting?
Oh, so screenwriting. So there are a bunch of screenwriting programs now. And that's where most people nowadays, that's where most people get the start. One of the first ones was Act One, which I don't know if it exists anymore, but Act One was put together by Barb Nicolosi, who is now a film or a screenwriting professor at a college in Virginia or something. She's a graduate of Northwestern in Chicago, Northwestern University Film Studies program. And she was out in LA. Barbara is a fascinating person. 7 years as a Carmelite nun, and 2 weeks before she's supposed to take her final vows, her the mother superior comes to her and says, I don't think this is for you. What?
Okay.
And decides to get into film. And I don't understand how that kind of thing happens, but anyway, but she's a fascinating person. So she started the first of those kind of programs, Act One, which I don't know if exists anymore, but there's a bunch of those that are like online where you're submitting something. Oh, I know there's one Roadmap. I think it's called Roadmap Writers. Same kind of thing. It's an online course that you take, you sign up, you've got experienced screenwriting people who are evaluating stuff and then responding to you. This has been one of the interesting things that we've seen over the last 10 years, the rise of competitions actually mattering. It used to be competition. You'd enter a screenplay in a competition and you win. That nobody cared. Now, competitions, there are production companies who are looking at the winners of screenwriting competitions. And the reason is just because of the growth of the industry. No, certainly nobody here, but some of us in this world are old enough to remember, when we had 3 channels and maybe public television, and that was it. And it went off at 10 o'clock at night, and the test pattern came up. Now, when you've got whatever it is, 600 channels that are all operating 24/7, the pipeline is considerably bigger. Consequently, when it comes to creating content, it's a monster that has to be fed,
Yeah.
and so there's all these avenues for it. Sorry, somebody else, Roadmap Rise.
Yeah, we had one more question, but also I want to mention Zena Dello because we've had her as a guest on here a couple of times, and she does screenwriting classes. So Storyteller Mission, I believe, is her site. So you could go there. Okay, last question. Patricia asked, what distinctives or differences are there in contracts for authors who are also illustrators and want to have rights to create art, cover, interior illustrations?
Is that on?
And I
here
will,
too?
yeah, it's in the chat if you go up a little bit.
Oh yeah. All right.
And Patricia is a beautiful artist and illustrator. I will tell you, she truly is very talented.
Hi, Patricia. So
Yes.
contracts for illustrations and art, or for cover art, or for interior illustrations, totally different from a book contract. I mean, it's completely different. And obviously, you probably already know this. I mean, they work one of two ways. It's either a one-time payment and the company is buying it from you. So, for example, they're paying you to create a book cover, and they're paying you, $1,500 or $2,500, and then they own it. Or it's a licensing fee where they're going to use it on this book, and then after that, it's going to go back to you and you're going to own it. So if the author gets the rights back and wants to self-publish the book, they would have to come to you and pay you again for that fee. That is going away. We have another one joining us, Sophia and her youngest son.
So
yes.
In my case, I'm both author and illustrator.
See, that wasn't part of this. I didn't know that there's, so as an author, so if what you're saying is you're doing a book with a publisher and then they also want you to do the art for it?
Actually, I want to do the art for it. How do I manage that in a contract?
Yeah, two totally separate contracts. I don't think I've ever seen a contract for an author that also included cover. Now, I'm not saying it's not out there, but I've never seen one. If it's from a medium-sized publisher to larger, they've got an art director who is responsible to either create a cover or find an artist who will create a cover for them, and they're going to pay a fee for that. From a smaller publisher down to like micro publishers and stuff like that, they are co-opting it out, going to some artist somewhere, or using some kind of a cover service. It's different with children's books. With children's books, it's really funny. I mean, we tend to think of like the Berenstain Bears or something, where it's the author, they do the pictures and they did the art and everything like that. Yeah, that almost never happens. Children's publishers, they are looking for somebody to do the text and somebody else to do the art, and they're two totally different contracts. And so I would say to you, probably need to, if you're going to sell them the book, and then say to them somewhere in the negotiation, by the way, I can do the cover for this, and I'd like to talk to you about a cover. I'm sorry, go ahead, Pam.
And they, like you said, it may not do this anymore. When I first published with Concordia, and that was, they picked it up in 98, and my best friend did the illustration.
The year I was born.
Yeah, right. Kim and I had gone to Sandy Cove Christian Writers Conference. We had a dummy book and everything. It's my best friend's professional illustrator, and she wasn't then; she is now. But they picked us up together, which is pretty unheard of. And it was two separate. Like I dealt with the editor, and Kim dealt with the art director.
Right.
So
Yep. That's how it normally works. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're two separate things. And like I said, I've never seen one contract that covers both. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened. I've just never seen it. By the way, and I assume you know about Squibby. Squibby is, definitely check out the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCWI. Squibby.
Never heard it pronounced before.
Yeah, in the industry, we all say Squibby.
It's
Society of Children's Book
SCWI.
Writers and Illustrators. And it's,
Yeah.
It's like saying the alphabet as a word.
Yeah, but Big Bird does that, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Absent-
yeah.
Absidephly,
Right.
Jekyll Manopher, Stewart's is.
Mixes,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
Yes.
yes.
Ow.
Okay. Nice to meet you all. I don't know, where is everybody, by the way?
New
All over
Jersey.
the place. Yeah. Tulsa.
Houston.
Birmingham,
Wyoming.
Alabama.
Oh, so you're really all over.
Who's
how'd
in
you guys-
Birmingham?
Cape Cod, Massachusetts.
Yeah, Brandy's up
Vermont.
in Vermont. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sophia's in
Sophia, are you in
Birmingham?
Birmingham?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm in Gunnersville.
Cool.
We have to have lunch.
Yeah, I will put my email in the chat.
Is there anything else from outside the Eastern time zone? Besides over in France, I mean.
Yeah.
Mountain time in Wyoming.
Melissa.
Yeah, Melissa's in Wyoming.
I am
Oh.
from Indiana here.
Oh, great.
Mhm.
We're at
Yeah.
in Indiana.
Where did she go?
Kayla, we're at in Indiana.
Oh, Northwest Indiana,
So let's see,
like
north.
Maryville, near Crown Point,
Oh,
kind
okay.
of bordering on the Chicagoland area.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Mm.
All
I
right.
was in Santa Claus, Indiana a couple weeks ago. That was fun.
That's fun. That is
Yeah.
fun. Isabel said met you at the 2020 Kentucky Christian Writers Conference, which probably was online or a virtual conference, I would imagine. Yeah. So, but she's a teacher and she had parents today, so she could only be.
Okay. Well, ask
She
her.
just one time. So, okay, well, everybody, thank you so much, Chip. Thank you for staying so long and for answering all of our questions.
Nice to chat with all of you. Yeah,
you so
enjoy your
much.
short
Yeah.
week here. Okay.
Thank you. We're very
Bye.
glad to have you here.
Thanks.
Next week, everybody, we're doing Writers Chat Unplugged, which will be a open mic, non-recorded time. So we're going to start out just trying to do some encouragement and support. So it will be a time to talk without being recorded. So there you go. For those of you who are watching the replay, we thank you for doing that. We do invite you to join us anytime on Tuesday mornings, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central. Check out our Writers Chat Facebook group, our Writers Chat Facebook page, where you can find all of our episodes. And we hope that you will join us sometime. Those of you here, thank you. And thanks for all the discussion and all the questions and all that good stuff. See you next week. Bye-bye.